With the 2018 Classic in the books and bladed jigs playing a key role for a lot of anglers, let's check out how I rig my chatterbaits and how I fish them. So there are essentially two chatterbait rigs that I'll use, a Z-Man chatterbait and a Straight King Rage Blade. So we'll start with the more basic Z-Man. The Z-Man I will run as a bait fish imitator. I'm throwing it as I'm fishing for bass high in the water column, usually by grass. I'm using this as a bait fish imitator, like I said, so bluegill, shad, herring, things like that, things that are higher in the water column, obviously. So I'm running a swim bait on there, or I'm running a fluke style bait. Now what that'll do is it'll usually give me less water resistance so that I can move it a little quicker and make sure they don't get a good look at it. I don't worry about color all too much other than what is naturally there. I run either a bluegill pattern or a white pattern. It gives me the opportunity to change the color with the actual trailer rather than the skirt. Now when it comes to the Straight King Rage Blade, I actually use these more than I use the standard chatterbait. I don't use them interchangeably whatsoever. They are different baits, they're different presentations, and they're different styles. You see here with this Rage Blade, what you get is a weighted blade, not a weighted jig. So this is going to come through the water very, very differently. So essentially I will run the Rage Blade for fishing things rather than fishing areas, if that makes sense. So docks, brush, laydowns, things like that. This is what I'm throwing this, grass flats, sandbars, things like that. I will run the chatterbait. That being said, the Rage Blade, I'm essentially running it almost always with a craw imitator. So I'm using a twin tail grub, a craw imitator. My favorite go-to though actually is a brush hog. And I usually run like the Havoc Hog or Havoc Hawk, whatever it's called. I'll have it in the description down below if you guys check that out. But I'll cut it down. It has two wings on it. I'll cut it between those two wings because it gives me the perfect length. You see here, you want the action makers to be below that skirt, because if that skirt gets in the way of this, it's just going to bind up the action of this trailer and you're not going to get what you need to get out of it. There's not a ton of rigging this. I run either 3/8 or 1/2 ounce. I prefer 1/2 ounce just because I can run this and 1/2 ounce a lot more efficiently than I can a 3/8. But I'll run the standard chatterbait in a 3/8 ounce usually because I can bulk it up with trailers to get that extra weight. For instance, this is a 3/8 ounce chatterbait with a trailer on it. It comes in at 7/8 of an ounce with that trailer. So with this trailer, it adds a ton of bulk to it. As where I'm throwing this thinner trailer on that Rage Blade, and it comes in at about the same weight, just under 7/8 of an ounce. So the versatility with your trailer is something a lot of guys don't think about other than just the resistance. But essentially the fall rate with this is going to be a lot higher, and that's why I run that little bit lighter bait on this because I want the fall rate more than the resistance. All right, so enough about how I fish these. Let's take a look at a few diagrams and I'll show you guys how I actually fish these baits to catch my large fish. During the early season when the fish are still in the deeper sections of the lake, I'll use that Rage Blade to essentially fish the bottom of the shelves and the shelf themselves. Now when I'm talking early season, I'm talking anywhere from about 40-degree water up to about 58-degree water. Once that water hits that 57 to 60 mark, I'll start heading up to those fish in the 6-foot or shallower marks. Once that happens and the fish either spawn or they move into the post-spawn time, from there I'll move on to the docks. At that point the water temperatures are usually in the mid-low 70s, so fish are positioning themselves under docks to either recuperate from the stress of spawn, or they're moved up there to their new summer homes. So with that being said, I will fish that Rage Blade up next to those docks, as you can see here how I do it. So I'm throwing that up underneath these docks, and I'm essentially trying to hit the pilings and the any kind of visible cover I can find, and letting that sink down using the weight of the blade itself to sink it. Now if these fish are small fish, I'll move out to a little bit deeper water, maybe 8 feet, and I'll throw that standard Z-Man chatterbait. With the Z-Man chatterbait, what I'm doing is I'm running on top of the grass. You can rip a trap through here, but but you're running into a lot of issues, as where I can put the Z-Man chatterbait in there, and I can essentially rip it without having to actually rip the bait out of the grass, causing a lot of commotion, maybe spooking fish in the process. You know, the chatterbaits and bladed jigs in general are very versatile bait, but these are the two that I use. These are how I use them. You know, a lot of guys are afraid to actually use them up shallow and next to docks because they're afraid of actually getting snagged up. Now, a big key with that straight king jig is I can throw it next to brush or laydowns or those docks without worrying about them kind of binding up, because that blade is going to help deflect the jig away from the cover. If you throw that Z-Man up next to the cover, you're going to have a lot of issues with that bait rolling over on occasion and actually grabbing the cover itself, causing more issues than you actually want. So with that being said, the rule of thumb is if you're fishing cover, throw the straight king rage blade. If you're fishing open water by grass, you know, maybe give that Z-Man a try. You know, it's got a little faster retrieve. You can move it a lot quicker. So that might be the absolute key. When it comes to dirty water, I'm not a huge advocate for blade color. Fish whatever you're more comfortable in. I feel like the silver blades are the most universal blades, and that's why I stick to those more often than not. That being said, when it comes to the rage blades, I like a colored blade. So the bluegill is my absolute go-to. Really, that's it, guys. You know, chatterbaits and bladed jigs in general are very easy bait to throw. A little later on in the season, maybe next week even, we'll have a video out of us on the water throwing these so you guys can actually see how we're fishing these baits in person. If you guys want to see that, make sure you subscribe because it could come at any time. As always, guys, I appreciate any likes you guys can throw at me. If you guys want to check out any of the lures that we're talking about today, look in the description down below. I'll put them down there for you guys. Have a good one and good luck on the water.